Hey, do you prefer to find the joy in life, or do you just want some help with that? If so, you're in the right place. So come on in and join the Joy Bunny clan. This is the My Slice of Life podcast. Welcome back, Joy Bunnies, to this week's episode of the My Slice of Life podcast. If you are new here, firstly, thank you and well done for finding me. My name is Sharon and I am your Highland host for this podcast, and this is where I encourage you to leave the doom and gloom at the door, pull up a chair and delve into a whole host of different topics with me. Basically, I just pick something I'm interested in and I hope someone else will find it interesting too. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. But I am coming at it from my perspective, hence My Slice of Life, and that's where the name comes from, in case you were wondering. You probably weren't, but I've just told you anyway. This is the season where we are opening the mystery files, and I will admit I didn't know about this week's topic until very recently. So please don't forget to give it a like, follow, share, all that good stuff, and do check out the links in the description where you will find no mystery, just the blog and the YouTube links, and also a couple of other places where you can support me if you are able. Buy me a coffee or become a patron on Patreon, where I'm putting up behind the scenes videos on a nearly weekly basis. It's much cheapness for you and much happiness for me and everyone else, because your support will help me keep doing this. So thank you. Whatever level of support you can offer, I really appreciate it. Now, on with this week's mystery. This episode, I think, is going to be a little bit shorter than I would normally do, but I really wanted to bring you this story, so I hope you don't mind that too much. And sometimes when I'm doing these kinds of episodes, I'll give you a quick rundown of what happened and then I go back over the background. But this week, I'm not going to do that. Instead, I want to give you the story from the beginning, because if you don't know it, or you don't know the full story, I think you'll like it better this way. So, this week, we are looking at the mystery of the Loretto Chapel staircase. Stay with me, because there is a very good reason we're looking at it. Well, hearing about it. You know what I mean. We're going back to 1850 in the territory of New Mexico. And there was a man who was the bishop of that territory called Bishop Jean-Baptiste Lamy. And he saw a need for the young girls there to get an education and sent teaching orders to open a school for them. He was answered by the Sisters of Loretto, who were based in Kentucky, and they sent 6 of their sisters to open the Loretto Academy. Now, the territory of New Mexico was full of Spanish-speaking citizens, as it had previously been under Mexican rule, so the 6 of them had to learn the Spanish language. And their journey to the territory wasn't an easy one by all accounts, and sadly, the Mother Superior actually died during their travels. And the surviving sisters finally arrived in Santa Fe, and their school was opened in 1853. Then a wee while later, in 1872, the same bishop, Jean-Baptiste Lamy, he commissioned the chapel's construction, which was called Our Lady of Light at the time. The construction began in 1872 and was in the popular Gothic revival style by French architect Antoine Mouly. Now, he'd worked on the Cathedral Basilica of St. Francis. Now, the chapel was nearly finished by 1878, but before it was completed, Mouly passed away, leaving the chapel unfinished. Now, the big problem they had was that there was no way to access the choir loft, which was now 22 feet above them. And I couldn't find any information about whether or not the French architect had plans somewhere about how to reach the upper level, and maybe they weren't suitable, but many say it was actually a design fault, as there was nothing in the plans in the first place about how these poor nuns were ever going to reach the upper levels. Whatever happened with the plans, the sisters themselves believed this to be a test of faith and set out to find a new carpenter to get the work finished as quickly as possible, because obviously they need this work done. So they called in carpenters to help solve the problem, but the only answer they could give was, use a ladder, as a staircase they thought would interfere with the interior space of the small chapel. The thinking was that with the height of the loft, a staircase would take up too much floor space, which would have meant less seating, and the sisters were, well, that was just not an acceptable answer at all, so they weren't going to have that. But when they thought about using a ladder, that was deemed unsuitable due to the sisters' clothing, as you can imagine. You don't want to be going up a ladder if you're wearing one of these long habits. Finally, the only advice they were given was to demolish the choir loft altogether. And as you can imagine, that was a no-no as well. Now, as with all these sorts of stories, details do get a little hazy with time, but the general idea is that the sisters decided to pray for the solution to their problem. And they prayed for 9 consecutive days to St. Joseph, the patron saint of carpenters. Made sense because they were needing a carpenter. And it is said that on the last day of the prayers, the novena, this 9 consecutive days known as a novena, a mysterious man came to the door of the church saying he was looking for work, and all he had with him was a box of simple tools and a donkey. Now, he didn't give his name by all accounts, but he did offer to build the staircase that they needed. He asked to be left alone so that he could work, which the sisters agreed to. And so, working on his own with only a few simple hand tools, this mysterious stranger completed a staircase after 3 months. Now, I'm going to say here there are some versions of the story say he did it overnight, and there are some saying it took him 6 months, 8 months. There's a whole variety of timeline, but whatever the actual time span was, when the staircase was completed, the man just disappeared, left, gone without a trace. And he didn't even ask for payment for his work, and the sisters never did find out who he was. The sisters did try the local lumber stores to see who was owed money for all this wood that had been used, but each place that they went to told them the same thing. He didn't get it from here. At this point, the sisters now believed a miracle had happened, as they now believed the mysterious man to be St. Joseph himself, not just because they couldn't find anyone to pay for the work. It was because when they walked into that chapel, they saw the most beautiful staircase they'd ever seen. Their prayers had truly been answered. So, who was this man? Where did he come from? And where did he get all that wood to build a staircase? And I should add here, right, that the staircase is completely wooden. Not one nail, not one screw, no glue, nothing was used in its construction. Just wood. So is this a mystery? Is it a miracle? Or is there a simpler explanation? Now, the staircase itself, I've done a lot of reading on it, so I'm going to keep it as concise as I can. It has 2 360-degree turns and no visible means of a central support. Interestingly, there are 33 stairs, which has been noted to be the age of Christ at the time of his death. A lot of people have studied just how the staircase was built without using glue, nails, screws and so on, and not being built in the usual way. Now, I'm not an expert on building anything, but when I looked into this, I found out that a conventional wooden staircase is supported by things called stringers, and if you're like me and you don't know what they are, allow me to read this definition that I found online. A stringer is a vertical support board or structural member that runs along each side or centre of the staircase, providing a framework for treads and risers. I got this next bit from Wikipedia, just so that I know I'm giving you as clear facts as I can. The staircase lacks the newel or central pole usually used to support and stabilise a spiral staircase, and therefore the means of supporting the weight is not obvious. However, the staircase is supported by stringers, just like a conventional straight staircase, although in this case, each stringer is twisted into a helix. So that bit was off Wikipedia. There is a lot more of the detail about what has been found out, about, how it was constructed. That's all online if you really want to delve into that aspect further. Okay, so they've got this spiral staircase. Now, about 10 years later, banisters were added to it because of the difficulty they found climbing this tall, tapered stair with no railing. And it's said that the original staircase, without any sort of rail at all, it was so frightening to go up and down that some of the nuns and the students actually came down that on their hands and knees. So the railing was added to help them get up and down these stairs more safely. Now, whether it's a miracle or not, the work was described in a Washington Post column by Tim Carter like this. I'm just going to give you a little quote here. "It's a magnificent work of art that humbles me as a master carpenter. To create a staircase like this using modern tools would be a feat. It's mind-boggling to think about constructing such a marvel with crude hand tools, no electricity, and minimal resources." And another professional carpenter who was interviewed by Ben Radford for his book, which was Mysterious New Mexico, quote, "The execution is just incredible. The theory of how to do it, to bend it around in a 2-turn spiral, that's some difficult arithmetic there." End quote. Over the years, many people have been studying how this staircase was actually made, but there have also been a lot of people who turn their attention towards identifying the carpenter. One historian, Mary J. Straw Cook, actually spent 7 years researching the staircase and collected all kinds of information to prove the possible identity of the mysterious carpenter, and she did this for her book Loretto, the Sisters and their Santa Fe Chapel. Now, according to her, she found a line in a diary used by one of the nuns in 1881 which showed that they did pay a man for wood, a man named, I think it's Rochat, it's spelt Rochas. He was a French carpenter. Cook also claims she found a local newspaper report who had mentioned it in 1881, and she's pointing out that the dates relating to this man being in the area, he got paid by the nuns, he's a carpenter, this all adds up. Despite that, there are some who completely disagree with Cook's theory, and one of those is a man, he's a writer named John Clark, and he stated that the memo in the logbook actually read, "Paid for wood, Mr. Rochat for N. School." And he contends this refers to a nearby school the sisters apparently hired him to build, and that the logbook makes no mention of a staircase. So, make of that what you will. It is also pointed out that Rochat was, and I'm sorry for the pronunciation if I'm wrong, but he was only credited with building the staircase upon his death in one obituary, which is weird when you consider there was a major newspaper had previously used an advertisement to try to find out who had built the staircase and came up with nothing. Now, you've heard most of the story up till now, and will have probably come to some sort of conclusion, but just before you close the deal on it, listen to this little bit. Whoever built the staircase used a type of wood which remained unidentified for years, and eventually a piece of the wood was sent for analysis, and it was found to be a type of spruce. Big deal, you're saying. Who cares? It's a type of spruce. What's so fancy about that? The problem is, it was a spruce which grows in very cold climates, and the nearest area it would have grown would have been Alaska, nearly 6,000 kilometres away. So, I ask you, how could a man with a donkey in Santa Fe have brought that much wood down from Alaska in the 1800s? Whatever the real story behind who built it and with what, it was described by the former Archbishop of Santa Fe, Michael Sheehan, like this. Here's a wee quote. "It will always be referred to as a miraculous staircase. It was an extraordinary piece to have been done in its time." End quote. The Loretto Chapel was used on a daily basis by the students and the nuns of Loretto Academy until the school closed in 1968, and after that it became a privately owned museum and a wedding venue which many people still go to so that they too can see the miraculous staircase for themselves. And I have heard a lot of people say that when you go there, it's not just the fact that the staircase itself is a beautiful thing to look at. They say there's a feeling you get there. And I know you walk into churches and chapels and there is, often a feeling you get. But so many people describe this, I don't even know the word to use for it, just an aura about the place that just tells them this place is something special. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of this week's episode. It is a little shorter, but I hope you don't mind because I really like this story and I wanted to bring it to you. Let me know what you think about this one in the comments below. Was it a miracle? Or was that just a story put out to encourage more people to go to chapel? Or is that just a little too cynical? Maybe. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to come back next week as we open a completely different mystery file. But until then, you little miracle of joy that you are, you take care of your wee self.